Welcome back to our review of the Catechism, and we are today going to be doing the 9th and 10th commandments, which is around page 115 to 119 of your version of the Catechism. And this is an exception to the rule because we're not going to have the memory work based on these two commandments. So focus on commandments 1 through 8 when it comes to the Catechism explanations, but you don't have to memorize the Catechism explanations of the 9th and 10th commandments. If you remember way back in the introduction to the Catechism, we pointed out that we have 2 commandments against coveting. That's because the Bible doesn't number the commandments, and it's difficult to know. So some churches have a commandment against having any other gods, first commandment, and then they have a second commandment against worshiping any false idols. We just count those as one commandment. Other churches count both commandments against coveting as one commandment against coveting. So we're just going to cover the 9th and 10th commandments by themselves or together today. The big question is always, what is coveting? And what it means is this desire to have what God doesn't intend for you. It's a rejection of the boundaries that God has put on your life. Remember that you have a creator. He made you. And coveting is basically telling God, you messed up. You should have given me somebody else's life, somebody else's stuff, somebody else's abilities. If I were the creator, I would have done a better job than you because I should have her abilities, her voice, his brains, popularity, things, family, whatever it is. When in the reality, everybody has a unique place in God's creation, and we are called to embrace that and give thanks for it, and coveting is basically a rejection of that. So what I want to do is go through a couple of these questions. You'll notice question 88 on page 116. It says, what is coveting? Coveting is a sinful desire in our hearts to acquire for ourselves anything that belongs to our neighbor. And that doesn't just mean physical things. It can mean attributes, gifts, a situation in life. It is also the desire to draw away from our neighbor for our own benefit, anyone who is important to our neighbor. So coveting can mean a wide range of things. I like to explain this in class sort of in this way. If you've ever given a gift to somebody, it matters to you how they receive that gift. Part of your relationship is that you put thought into that gift and you want them to appreciate that. If I spend a lot of time picking out, say, Christmas gifts for my kids, and they come rushing down to open gifts, and they all open them up and they look and say, you want to trade? They're saying, you gave me the wrong gift. You messed up. I would rather not have what you intended for me. That would hurt the giver of gifts. Well, God is the giver of gifts. So when we covet, we're telling God he gave us the wrong gifts. He should have given us somebody else's life. So we keep the commandment when we don't try to entice away or finagle to get our neighbor's gifts, and when we're not jealous of them, when we don't have spite in our hearts because it irks us that they have something that we don't have. This could be whether it's somebody who's richer and wealthier than we are, and we just think they must have cheated, they must somehow not deserve that. We have to remember that everything is a gift from God, and God gives different gifts to different people for his own reasons. And also not plotting to lure it away. And remember, we talked in the 7th commandment about how it can be perfectly legal for you to get your neighbor's stuff and still be contrary to the commandments. Well, coveting is the way that we do that, usually by something that seems perfectly legal and on the up and up, but in reality is an attempt to get the best of our neighbor through maybe perfectly legal means. And that kind of plotting is something that is forbidden by the commandment. But the biggest thing that we can do to keep this commandment is be thankful. Usually when you are jealous, when you are covetous, when you are resentful and envious of your neighbor, the remedy for that is to count your blessings, to look at what God made you to be and to do, what you are, as something that is unique and something that is loved and blessed by God. And when you can do that, coveting kind of seems purposeless. Remember, we talked way back about how anytime you break any of the commandments, you're also breaking the first commandment. You shall have no other gods. And when you covet, you're letting something else be your God. You are allowing yourself to be carried away by your own desires and ambitions in a way that's totally separate from God's intention for your life and who you are. So what causes us to covet, apart from just the obvious, our sinful nature? We talked about how our sinful nature causes us to hate, causes us to lust. It also causes us to covet, and that comes from the inside out. And a lot of things exacerbate that or draw it out of us or make it worse. One of those things is peer pressure. Everybody else has this, whatever it is, designer shoes or clothing. I need to have that to fit in. That's making your peer group your God. You are coveting what they have. Sometimes advertising does that. You don't even know that you lack something until a commercial says, oh, you'd be way better off with this. And all of a sudden you find yourself dissatisfied with your life. Question 91 on page 117 says, is all wanting, desiring, and ambition sinful? And the answer is no. Remember, things are a good gift from God. God encourages us to seek his blessings of food, shelter, good jobs, health, success, and so on for ourselves and our family. There's nothing wrong with having things. God intends for you to have good things and to receive them with gratitude. Coveting is when we transgress those boundaries. I deserve his physique, her voice, her brains, his sense of humor, that person's car, that person's life, that person's marriage. You're not intended to always be comparing yourself with other people. You are intended to receive the life God gave you and realize that it is all gift. You didn't bring anything to the table. And we're going to get to this soon when we get to the first article of the Creed. We're going to see that everything is a gift. It's not possible for God to owe you anything that you don't have because you came into this world with nothing. So when we talk about love your neighbor as yourself with coveting, one of the things to do is to realize that there's a distinction between you and your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself, but honor the distinction between you and your neighbor. Love yourself, what God called you to be and to do. Love your neighbor and what God called your neighbor to be and to do. And don't seek to blend them or transgress those boundaries. So love your neighbor as yourself still applies to coveting. It's honoring the distinction between you and your neighbor. And if you think about it, when you covet, you rob yourself of one of God's greatest gifts. And that gift is contentment. If you can learn to be content, then anything God gives you will be safe for you. But if you can't be content with what you have, you're not going to be content if God gives you something more. God could give you twice as good of a house or a car or whatever it is, and then in time you would not be content with that. It's always possible. The grass is always greener. So the idea is to learn to be content with what you have, and then maybe God will bless that with even more. But if you're not content, then nothing is going to make you content. Because again, it comes from the inside out. So the 9th and 10th commandments show you your sin, when they make you realize that deep inside you is this desire to be your own creator, to define your own life, and to have the best of everything at your neighbor's expense. And that is to be killed in contrition and repentance so that you can receive this new life that rejoices with gratitude in who God made you and the unique things about your place in the world. The 10th commandment as a curb, as a mirror that shows you your sin, and then even as a guide for the Christian life to learn and to practice gratitude is a great blessing. And we will continue starting tomorrow with the Creed and the first article of the Creed about how God is our Creator who gives us everything that we are and we have. Thank you.